insane. You keep it so loud that we speaking your refrain. Adam Story's got a point if you let him explain. Here's the pun of all puns, get a pun with Papa Wayne. Rum tapping the vein, and 9 minutes bringing pain. MHOG secreting, leaving a stain. You ain't as dope as us, bitch. Stay in your lane.
Welcome back to the Metal Hand of God. I'm your host, Adam, and with me right now is John, the Hustle Lord.
I am here. I am driving.
You gotta say something when I point to you. I didn't really point, but you get it. So this episode is gonna be a little different. So we normally we would do this on video, and I'd do a Full Metal movies or something, just do it on YouTube. But we got a long drive. We were just at 3 Alarm Comics in Biloxi for the day, and so we are going to do a full movie breakdown. This is going to be all about Spider-Man Homecoming. If you have not seen Spider-Man Homecoming, you should probably not listen anymore to this movie.
This podcast.
It's a movie. We're moving. Fuck you, Hustle. Anyway, so, with that in mind, you've been warned all about the fucking spoilers now. So, John.
Yes.
What the fuck just happened? Oh, sorry. So we're on the road in John's car, and his camera just made a noise. His dash cam. I was like, what happened? Anyway, what did you think of Spider-Man Homecoming?
I thought it was an excellent movie, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. I don't know if I'd say it's the best Spider-Man movie made so far, but it's probably the one that I enjoyed the most watching.
All right, fair enough. I think this is going to be one of those movies that's going to aggravate me when people talk to me about it, because I think it's going to be like The Dark Knight, and everybody's going to be like, oh, Adam hated it. Adam didn't hate it. Adam, I liked it. I thought it was very enjoyable. I saw it twice. I paid for it once, and I saw it with... Did I see it with you? Yeah, I saw it with you and your wife, who's not going to listen to this, but anyway, hi Liz. Anyway, I saw it twice because I enjoyed it, and actually, I partially saw it twice because I felt like I needed to be reminded what happened in it. Because, a lot of shit happens in this movie. It's not... normally Spider-Man movies feel to me like, there's a story and, something happens, and then a few minutes later something else happens. This feels like something happens, then something else happens. And then more shit happens on top of that. And look, wait, another thing happened. Felt like a lot of shit happened, so I needed to see it twice. But I really liked it. I think Tom Holland is the best Spider-Man, but I think I personally still actually like Amazing Spider-Man better than the other ones. Even though there's a lot that's wrong with that movie, but I feel like that was, I don't know, it's weird. So, I feel like this movie got as much right as it did wrong, and I feel like Amazing Spider-Man got the things that this movie got wrong, got that right, but the opposite. They got a lot of shit wrong that this movie got right.
I see.
Do you actually agree, or are you just shut up?
I don't know. I don't think there's much wrong with this movie. that would put it on an equal footing of the things that I find wrong with the Amazing Spider-Man 1, at least. Now, I guess it's less that I find Amazing Spider-Man 1 to be a very, like, not really a cohesive movie. There's a lot about it I enjoyed, and I really liked aspects of it. I really liked the two main leads and their performances, but...
I thought you were going to say, I really liked that asshat that played Spider-Man.
No, I really like Garfield, and I really like his acting. I think the writing of his character didn't do him a lot of favors, but I like the first Amazing Spider-Man movie. I don't really care for the second, but the first one, I like it, but I feel like the seams show in that movie. Like, you can see where it was shot and pulled apart, and there was reshoots, and it was stitched back together, and it just doesn't really work as a whole to me. But I don't dislike the movie. I like it fairly well. Like Homecoming, I don't feel that problem at all. As far as like it not feeling like I feel like it's a cohesive whole, which is, it's it's a lot to its credit, because it comes where we've already been introduced to this Spider-Man. He's already existing in a universe that we've already existed in for, however many movies it's been. So I think this movie had a tall order, especially since a lot of people I know, and me included, were kind of burnt out on Spider-Man now. Not only have we had 5 movies in, a decade, but the last one wasn't that good, and it already retread a lot of stuff that we've already covered. Like, we went from 0 to Harry Osborn as the Goblin in 2 movies instead of 3 movies this time, which is like, I don't know, but I don't know. I think this movie it felt there were, it's not something too complex and, whatever. But for what it shot for, I think it executed it well, and it made Peter Parker a likable teenage human character that you rooted for, which I think is, as a really important thing that they were able to pull off.
I agree with most of that. But I do think this movie has a lot of problems with story. And I'll start with one. Who do you think is the villain of this movie?
Homecoming?
Yeah.
Well, the Vulture is necessarily, I would guess, the villain of the piece. And he not only provides, the antagonist for Spider-Man to face, but he's also the figure. Spider-Man's trying to have it both ways through the movie. He's trying to both be a student and also, be a normal life with his, his schooling and friends and whatever, but also be Spider-Man. And also, the Vulture, who's very well played by Michael Keaton, he's the figure who not only is opposed to Spider-Man, but then in the end shows Peter Parker that, like, he can't really divide his world of Spider-Man and his world of Peter Parker. Like, they come together, and it's really interesting how it he has to face that truth at the end.
All right, I don't want to be a dick, but no, all that's wrong. The villain of this movie is Tony Stark. Everything in this fucking movie happens because Tony Stark is an asshole. The movie starts with, and then, by the way, this was the worst scene of the movie for me, because it clashes with everything else, but the movie starts with Michael Keaton's character, they show, like, he's a good guy, he's a family guy, his little girl draws, which doesn't come into play the rest of the show, like the rest of the movie, because the rest of the movie there's a different character that draws, but that's okay. But he's a really good guy, and then Damage Control, like an old Marvel concept, comes in, played by the bitch from the Cagney and Lacey, Tyndale, whatever her name is, and all of a sudden he's fucking like, fuck it, I'm a villain, I'm gonna kill people now. And it didn't really play. Like, I think him as a villain, like a character, Michael Keaton, pulls everything off, except for that one scene because that don't really work. But back to my point. So, Damage Control shows up. You can rub my arm. It's okay.
You love it.
Damage Control shows up, and they're like, fuck you. I don't care if you lose your house. And by the way, they're just showing you Michael Keaton's crew. Realistically, there were probably 50 different subcontractors who were hired to do this work, who many of whom probably lost their livelihoods because Tony Stark went to the government and said, hey, I'm going to create this company called Damage Control, and they're going to clean up shit like this. And so these people just throw it out on the street. And that's Adrian, what's his last name? It's Toomes. Adrian Toomes. That's his motivation. So you got that. And then later, you're introduced to, right after you're introduced to Peter Parker. And so Tony gives him a fucking $4 million suit with an artificial intelligence and web bombs and all kinds of shit. And then he throws him out on the street. And that's it. And he talks all the time about I wanted you to be better than me. Well, then why the fuck didn't you trade him? Things keep happening in this movie, and I'll give you a bunch of examples. When him and Peter are fighting after the boat thing, Peter's like, I went to you with this, and you ignored me. And he's like, no, I didn't. I called the FBI. Why the fuck didn't you tell him that? All you had to do was fucking, you have fucking internet in your brain. And he's got a fucking artificial intelligence, which, by the way, if you were too lazy to train him, Tony, why the fuck didn't you just activate the artificial intelligence and have her train him? That seems like common sense. And also, best relationship in the movie is Karen and Peter. There was not enough Jennifer Connelly as Karen, the artificial intelligence in this movie. That was the best relationship in the movie. And anyway, so and then there's so many things Peter's talking about look, these guys they're selling weapons to drug dealers and shit with Chitauri technology. He's like, don't you think we should do something? And Tony goes, that's a little below the Avengers pay grade. No, the fuck isn't. Stop and think about this. I was thinking about this the other day. The best subplot in this movie would make such a more amazing movie than anything Marvel has done before. Fucking drug dealers get a hold of alien technology. Okay? And they're stealing it from the U.S. government, which, by the way, Tony Stark's organization seems pretty lax in keeping track of, because they steal it for 8 years and nobody fucking notices until fucking Spider-Man is going to a party and sees the shit in the fucking street one day. And anyway, so meantime, the U.S. government is collecting alien technology, which, by the way, I don't trust the U.S. government to have alien technology. And this is the part that would make a much better movie. What would happen if the United States got hold of alien technology? Don't you think the other governments of the world would start World War III and start nuking the fuck out of us if they thought that we had a technological advantage that would decimate the entire world?
Well, maybe you're supposed to think it's the end of Raiders, and that they just put it all away in a warehouse. Well, the one that Peter ended up in, and everybody's supposed to agree that it's all shut away and not to be used.
Fair enough. Still wouldn't work. But I can accept it. Look, I understand you got to accept certain things in the movie. I can accept that. I'm just saying that would make an amazing movie.
Well, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But again, Tony Stark basically says that's beneath us. When in actuality, that's a bigger threat than Hydra and all that other shit. It's not bigger than Thanos, but they should absolutely be out there finding this alien technology and shit like that.
Logically, that's true, because don't they reference that they have the black hole grenades from Thor: The Dark World at some point. I think I heard that in the dialogue about like the weapons that they were selling.
What? I don't think they mentioned Thor, but they did mention like black hole grenades.
Right.
So.
Well, it was just the one.
Oh yeah, that's a little clever thing that I noticed.
The dark elves used, which to me is like, insanely crazy technology. You would make someone disappear with no trace with those grenades, pretty much.
Right.
Which, it seems like they would be a little more concerned about tracking that down.
Actually, one of my favorite lines in the movie is Donald Glover plays the Prowler.
Oh, right.
And he's just like, dude, I just want to stick somebody up. I don't want to rape them into time or something like that.
Send them back in time.
Oh, yeah, shoot them back in time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was great.
So, like, Tony's just super responsible. And what it comes down to is, like, this is why it bothers me. It's one of my pet peeves in movies, and this is the problem I had with Civil War. I don't like movies where the only way the plot functions is if people do illogical things and don't tell people information that they would normally tell people. And I'll give you for instance, Civil War. In Civil War, everything that happens because Captain America doesn't go to Tony and just explain what's going on. And every time a character's like, shouldn't we talk to Tony? Cap goes, no, he wouldn't listen. Except at the end of the fucking movie, he sees evidence that of what happened, and he's like, oh shit, I was wrong. Let me go help Captain America. He fucking believes him instantly when he gets the information. So, and then later on, Tony finds out that the Winter Soldier killed his parents, and Cap knew, and he's like, did you know? And Cap's like, yeah, kinda. It's like, why the fuck didn't you tell him that? Everything that happened in that movie happened because Cap is an asshole. The entire movie, Cap is the villain in that movie. Tony Stark is the villain in pretty much every other Marvel movie except Captain America Civil War. Anyway, so, that's my, I don't like that. I don't like that, the whole move of this movie happens because Tony Stark's an asshole.
Well, as a random aside, who in the cinematic universe is actually in the Avengers at this point, post-Civil War? When he says, can the Avengers, this is below their pay grade. Vision, who's like a god.
I think War Machine probably, they gave him an exoskeleton or some shit like that. He's probably a cyborg now. Oh man, in the next movie, in Infinity War, we're going to find out it's that Marvel plot from Avengers, the Initiative, where he's bonded to his suit now and he can't get out of it.
Oh my gosh.
Which they got rid of later. But there was a while where he literally was his suit was his body. Anyway,
I assume Black Widow still is because she was on Iron Man's side, but then she kind of didn't. She kind of let Captain America escape. But I assume she's still an Avenger.
Yeah, I think
but then counting Iron Man, that's 4, and you've just got 2 armored dudes, 1 Infinity, robot, and
Thor.
Thor, but
he's part-time.
He's part-time. I assume you're supposed to assume that he hasn't been on the Earth all this time. I assume.
Yeah, I think they're going to explain that in Thor Ragnarok. Yeah. That's probably because him and Hulk aren't there, so that probably takes place during Civil War.
Right.
But I don't know. I agree with you. I don't know who's in it. Maybe Tony shouldn't be turning people down like that.
You're right. I don't know if there's only 3 or 4 Avengers right now.
Yeah, they could use a Spider-Man. But, so Tony Stark's the villain of the movie. The other thing, so they made some strange changes to this franchise. One of them is Peter doesn't have spider sense anymore. Not in this franchise.
Right.
He's frequently, one of the first scenes with him as Spider-Man is him sneaking into the apartment that he and Aunt May live in, and he sneaks in, and all of a sudden, Gank, or Ned Leeds, which we'll get into in a minute, or a few minutes, Ned Leeds sneaks up on him. And as soon as that happens, I'm like, he doesn't have fucking spider sense.
Yeah, I think in this universe,
I think the artificial intelligence.
The suit is going to be the spider sense,
right?
In a way,
it's still a weird change, though.
I mean, it's weird in that
I'm not saying that it's a problem.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a problem. I didn't notice it until halfway in the movie. Well, no, I noticed it when the Ned Leeds thing happened, but it didn't bother me. I'm just saying it's an interesting change that they decided to make. The other major change, and this is something that I didn't think about fully until I was reading a post by Max Landis, the guy who wrote Chronicle and Ultra, and he's American Ultra. Is it Max Landis or is that his dad? It's Max, right? John Landis. John Landis' dad.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, again, most of this isn't stuff that I specifically put together. I did notice that there was an underlying thing where you never hear him say, with great power comes great responsibility, which I don't necessarily need him to say that, but I did think it was noticeable that it never came up. So what Max Landis pointed out is that that's not just something that doesn't happen in a literal sense in the movie. In a broader sense, there is no sense of responsibility at all in the movie. Like in a weird way, the fact that they didn't mention Uncle Ben dying becomes sort of a cascade effect, wherein it's like Uncle Ben doesn't exist to this Peter Parker. He never raised him. It was all Aunt May. He never told him with great power comes great responsibility. Peter never had to stop a bank robber and didn't and got him killed. Because, like, in terms of this universe, Peter's 50? 16, 15?
Yeah.
So Uncle Ben would have died within a year of this happening. And, like, neither he nor Aunt May acts at all like Uncle Ben, like, is a problem. Like, he's pretty good. She seems like a hip single chick who I found out she's actually a year older than Rue McLanahan was in the Golden Girls. And I just want to say I'd fuck her and Rue McLanahan, like, now. I don't know if anyway, I'm going to move on from that thought. I'm just saying, Rue McLanahan's fucking hot. Anyway, but so there's this like, so they act as if Uncle Ben didn't really exist, and then you see that throughout the movie. Peter keeps doing irresponsible things that frequently almost get people killed, and then when he saves them, he gets the credit. Like the bomb thing in the Washington Monument. He caused that. Because he was irresponsible, because he was like, nah, I'm going to do this and they're going to make me an Avenger. And then he almost killed, like, his best friend. And everyone that he's friends with at that school. Including Indian Flash Thompson, which is another weird thing that we'll get to later. It's a little bit. But he keeps doing that. He keeps making these huge mistakes. And again, the overarching villain is Tony Stark, because Tony doesn't notice that he keeps telling Tony this shit's going on. Tony's like, look, just don't call Happy. Go eat a churro. That's it. Like, that's his whole fucking advice. Instead of, oh shit, this organization that are created to keep track of alien technology isn't doing their job. Like, that place doesn't even have alarms. He broke out. Which, actually, that's my favorite part. There's like a 5-minute sequence where he's like, Karen, help me break out of this. Because she's like, yeah, it's not going to open until tomorrow morning. When he breaks out, it's tomorrow morning. So he spent the whole time, he spent literally like 8 hours trying to get the thing open. But, anyway. So yeah, so there's no sense of responsibility in it, and no sense of consequence. Like, later on, when he saves the day, Tony goes to him and says, you messed up. Big time. Which we agree. Yes, he did. Then the next line is, but then you did the right thing, and you stepped up and you did the right thing. Peter did the exact same thing the third time as he did the first two. He did nothing different. He went out on his own instead of calling. Actually, he did try to call for help later, but still, he went out on his own, and here's something. And this is an example of no consequence. This movie's almost in some ways, almost like a DC movie. When he's on the Stark plane, the fucking engine fuselages keep falling out over the city, and there's no concern with where it lands. Like, I think we're supposed to believe, like, it fell into the water, but you keep seeing city underneath them. Like, that would have killed thousands of people, every single one of them. Can you imagine? Like,
you mean the engines?
It was the fuselage. Am I saying the wrong thing?
Well, the fuselage is the main body of the...
I'm sorry. The engines, the propellers, there had 4 of them that fell out onto the city.
Right.
And there's no attention paid to it. They just drop out. And part of me was like, are they going to show that he's over water just to, like, prove a point? No, they don't do that. They don't worry about it. But he crashes this massive, like, plane, this carrier plane. And again, so many people could have gotten killed. More people than the ferry. But,
well, he diverted it away from the towers.
Right. I understand that part. What I'm saying is, he didn't do anything different. He did the same thing. It's just this time, he lucked out and nobody that we know of died.
Well, that's true.
So what I'm saying is, like, there's no sense of... The only thing that he learns at the end is he's like, maybe I should be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, which comes out of nowhere, because the whole movie's predicated on the idea that he wants to be an Avenger, and just for some reason, at the end, he's just like, nah, I'm good. And I don't know why. I don't know why he wasn't just like, yes, please give me the super, the $10 million, which I did like the new Iron Spider suit. I don't know what it was designed on, but it looked familiar. Like, it looked like an Alex Ross design or something.
Well, I think, like, part of what he learns is, like, the whole movie, he wants to go to school and then...
But at some point he doesn't. At some point he's just like, I'm going to be an Avenger and then I'm out of here. He just says it like, and that's when he gets detention. Because the teacher's behind him, and he's, not the teacher, the principal's behind him. And he's just like, we need to talk. No, you can't just leave school when you feel like it.
Well, I mean, what I'm saying is, like, with the Vulture, he learns that,
somebody needs to look out for that. I'll give you that. I think that's a fair point. It still felt a little out for me, but at least that is an explanation that makes sense.
Right.
Because you're right, he even says that, like, somebody needs to look out for the little guy.
And even though that's even part of the Vulture's point of view, is he's the little guy.
Right.
Although he's kind of full of shit, but at the same time...
But that goes to my point, that Tony Stark is the villain.
Well, he even, like, Vulture even says as much, because he's like, how did you think that Tony Stark became rich?
Right.
Which I really admire the movie for leaving that line because I feel like that's the kind of line that someone probably at some point was like, why don't you just leave that out? But,
all right, well, put it to you this way. Like, let's imagine this movie takes place in strictly the Sony universe, and they got someone else to play Iron Man that wasn't as charming as Robert Downey Jr. Do you think any of that would have been pulled off with a different actor as Tony Stark? So that's the thing, like, Tony Stark, in all these Marvel movies, he does fucked up shit, like, not intentionally, but he does stuff that does, much like Peter, nearly get a lot of people killed, or actually does get a lot of people killed. But it's like, it's Robert Downey Jr., we really like him, so you kind of ignore that.
Well, it's part of, I think it's part of his character as this sort of can't keep but screwing up over and over and over somehow, and he keeps learning the same, not exactly the same lesson, but in a way he keeps trying to fix the world for everybody, and he keeps
right, and you're right, that is part of his personality. I'm just saying the reason that the audience ignores all that is because they like Robert Downey Jr.
He's an extremely charismatic actor and an extremely charismatic performance.
Imagine the original performer who was going to be Iron Man. Tom Cruise was his character. And I'm not saying people don't like Tom Cruise, but I think people would buy him more as an asshole.
Right.
And blame him more, and I don't think he would pull it off the way Robert Downey Jr. does.
Right.
Because Robert Downey Jr. doesn't play Tony Stark. Robert Downey Jr. plays Robert Downey Jr. In the comics, Tony Stark is more of an asshole that you don't like. So those are my major complaints with the movie. But I do think that they got as much right as they did wrong. Like, I think most of the performances in it were fantastic. I am still weirded out by wanting to fuck Aunt May. Like, I feel like Sally Field as Aunt May, I thought was perfect. Because I don't want to fuck Sally Field. I want to fuck Marissa Tomei, and it's weird to want to fuck Aunt May.
Well, that's because...
I know you're not trying to fuck Marissa Tomei, but don't you think so? Come on, John. Come on, hustle.
But it's like, we are just used to 80-year-old Aunt May because that's what Steve Ditko drew at the first. But there's no reason that Aunt May should logically be that old if Peter's 15,
I understand what you're saying. And it makes sense. But between Marissa Tomei and Diane Lane as Ma Kent, I don't want to fuck Ma Kent either. But I totally want to fuck Diane Lane. And that's weird. You shouldn't, I don't want to be an age where I want to fuck Ma Kent and Aunt May.
Wasn't Diane Lane Judge Hershey in the first Judge Dredd?
Yes. But she doesn't age for whatever reason. She was also the mother in that Jump, the Christian Hayden Christensen movie. The wannabe X-Men movie, with Sam Jackson.
Right.
She's in a lot of stuff. But anyway, Marissa Tomei is great. The kid who plays Ned Leeds, which again we're going to get to all that stuff in a minute, but he's great. Even Jennifer Connelly as Karen, like I said, that is a thing to me. This movie does feel like, those movies like Valentine's Day that have all these intertwining plots,
right? With
different relationships. This movie feels like that to me, except the other person in every relationship is Peter. So, there's a plot about Peter's relationship. Oh, I didn't talk about that, but we'll talk about it in a minute. Peter's relationship with Liz.
Right.
There's a plot with Peter's relationship with Gank, Peter's relationship with Aunt May. But they feel like there are specific plots in this movie that are divergent, but then sort of intersect with the other ones, if that makes sense. I don't know. It just feels very... I don't even know what the word is. But it's interesting. It's not bad. It's just interesting. But, So Liz... So... Now, this is something only people like you and me would notice. When you hear Ned, most people are like, it's kind of weird that somebody would have the name Ned.
Right.
But he's Ned Leeds.
Ned Leeds, yes.
Who's the second Hobgoblin, I think.
One of them. I'm actually not too knowledgeable about my Hobgoblin history.
I'm pretty sure he's the second. He took over from the British mercenary guy.
Right. I know that they had to do a last minute when the first reveal was a last minute switch up or something.
Yeah, there's a long story behind that we don't need to get into.
Right.
I don't even know all the characters in that. There's it's one of those stories that the writer had planned out, and this was before the internet, but people figured it out, so he's like, fuck it. Now it's Ned Leeds. Anyway, so here's the weird thing about Ned Leeds, and this is there's a lot of weird racial diversity stuff in this. So Ned Leeds looks like a character named Gank or Ganky. I think it's Gank. But anyway, Gank is Miles Morales' Asian best friend.
Right.
He looks like Gank. I think Gank was also a tech geek. I'm not really sure. But let's assume he is. And we know that the character is based on Gank because Sarah Pichelli and Brian Bendis get a story credit, or a thank you, whatever it's called, at the end of the movie. So we know it's Gank. But for some reason they decided to name him Ned Leeds. Which is fucking weird.
I mean, but his name is Ned. I think, is his actual...
No, they confirmed him Ned Leeds.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
But even if it wasn't Ned Leeds, it's implied when because the first name that you see, one of the first names you see is Betty Brant.
Right.
So then you got Betty Brant, so Ned, so it's Ned Leeds. Then you get Liz, who you assume is Liz Allen because at that point, you know what I'm saying? They're using all these Spider-Man character names. And then you have, again, Indian Flash Thompson, which I don't have a problem with that actor or that character, but that was not Flash Thompson. Like, when he's like, yo, DJ Flash in the house, I was like, fuck you. But it was just weird to me, like, so the Liz Allen thing is probably the only bothersome one, because later on you find out, okay, what did you think of the twist that Liz was Adrian Toombs' daughter?
I mean, it's one of those movie coincidences that probably is, way too convenient for,
right,
reality's sake, but I think in the movie's terms it works fine, and it's a pretty good, twist moment, and it also brings home to Peter, like, that, he's been trying to, lead the double life of this secret identity superhero, and both worlds come crashing together at that one moment where he opens the door, and I think it's a really, it's a really strong moment. I can understand, though, if it didn't work for some people, though.
I think most people it worked for, and I can't even say it didn't work for me. I honestly don't know how to feel about it, because I'm still stuck on her being Liz Allen. And so... And okay, so the actress who plays her is black, but you can see her being mixed.
Right.
So I guess I can kind of accept that, but I'm just, like, at that point, like I said, like, I'm just assuming this is Liz Allen. And I'm like, wait, is that her stepdad, or is she Liz Toombs? Because I don't know.
Maybe she is, like, a child from a previous marriage of the mom or something. I don't know.
But that's the problem with introducing, like, that kind of twist. Like, it's like, now you have questions like, wait, is she, because she keeps calling him dad, and he's obviously been raising her since she was a little girl, because they had the picture, so she would have been, 7 or 8 when she drew that picture of the Avengers. But yeah, I still don't quite know, like, I don't hate it. I just kind of have trouble buying it, I guess.
I don't know. I don't know why they would call the character Liz if it's, it's going to open up all those questions. On the other hand,
but no one's going to notice that but people like us.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I noticed it, and it didn't really matter to me because,
It only matters to me because now in the middle of a movie that I'm enjoying, I'm asking myself, like, wait, is that Liz Allen or is that not Liz Allen? And it's the same thing with Gank being named Ned Leeds. I'm like, wait, is it Ned Leeds? Is it Gank? Is it neither? Is it both? I shouldn't have those questions.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like a thing where, I mean, I do have those moments in the movie where I'm trying to figure that out. Well, who's this character supposed to be? On the other hand, it doesn't really matter because the movie is just trying to tell its own story.
Right.
I don't know at what point they decided to have this character be named this instead of this, but on the terms of the movie, whether he's named this or that or Bob, it doesn't matter as far as the
it doesn't, but I feel like this movie, and I have this feeling with a lot of movies lately, I feel like this movie wasn't quite finished, like it was like one draft shy of being polished.
Oh, I have that feeling with almost all movies nowadays. I feel like
there's a lot of them like that, right?
Yeah. It feels like they were, like, at some point they were like, okay, this is our release date. This draft seems shootable.
Right.
So we'll just...
Rogue One's one of those movies where I was like, there's a lot that I like about this, but why is this like that? Right. Why is this here? And I'll give you a perfect example. I mentioned it earlier. So at the beginning of the movie, Adrian Toombs shows a picture of the Avengers that his daughter drew, which is supposed to be Liz.
Right.
But through the rest of the movie, you have this Michelle character that has no purpose in the movie, frankly. She shows up, she says something snarky like, Peter, what are you doing? I'm just kidding, I don't care, and then she leaves. Then she just keeps doing that. And the other thing that she does is she draws, and then she makes a weird racial comment about the Washington Monument, which apparently isn't even true. Apparently there's no evidence, they don't know for sure, but there's no evidence that the Washington Monument was built by slaves. In fact, they think that it wasn't, but I don't know. Anyway, but she does nothing. But I had the sneaking suspicion that at one point in the movie, there was no Liz Allen. There was just Michelle, and they were the same character. And then at some point they were like, no, there needs to be a consequence of Adrian Toombs going to jail, and if it's Michelle, she's got to go away, and they'd be a different character. I think. I don't know, but that's my suspicion. And that's what I mean by, like, I feel like this movie wasn't quite polished.
Right.
And there's, like, little things that don't make sense. One of them, here's another big one. So the Tinkerer's in this movie, which I enjoy. You know, like, it's kind of cool. The Prowler's in it, but he's not really a villain, which fits with the Prowler.
I really like that moment in the parking garage,
where he's like, I got ice cream.
Yeah, and he's like talking to Spider-Man, who turns on his Dark Knight voice, which I thought was actually really funny.
Right.
And he's just like not intimidated at all, and
yeah, and he says like, you got to get better
at this part. Which I really appreciate it, because I mean, it's really, if you got a 15-year-old kid going out and trying to interrogate criminals, you know.
Look, I'm not gonna get into that whole thing where Donald Glover could have been Spider-Man and whether he should or shouldn't, even though he should. But Donald Glover's the best character in this movie.
Yeah.
like I mentioned the line earlier, like, I don't want to like shoot this guy at that time. But then he's got other little lines where, like, he's clearly not a great guy.
Yeah, yeah.
But then he's like, I got a nephew that lives in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I don't want those guns out there. But it's like, I feel like he's a full-rounded character.
Right.
Even though he's got all of 2 minutes in the movie.
Right.
And they remind you at the end, he's like, you're still a bad guy. You were still trying to rob people. You were trying to buy guns off of, like,
right.
gun runners. But anyway, yeah, but there's all kinds of, like, little things in the movie that I feel like just didn't quite come together. But, and this is kind of like, we were talking about Amazing Spider-Man earlier. You and I talked about that movie, and you've explained every problem you have with that movie, and everything you said, I seem to recall going, well, that's true. Well, that's true. That's definitely true. But I still really enjoyed the movie.
Right.
And you, like, because at the end of the day, like, none of these Marvel movies are perfect. They all have some flaw, or it's like, oh, just chase the MacGuffin, right. You know, or whatever. Like,
and almost all of them have weak villains.
I think people are a little harsher on the villains than they deserve. Some of them, like Thor: The Dark World, absolutely. There's barely anything to what's his name, the Dark Elf.
And there's the Ant-Man guy whose name I don't even know. Besides that,
Scott something.
He gets into the Yellow Jacket.
Yeah, he's Yellow Jacket.
Yeah, I mean, he's like bargain basement of.
He's cheesy, but at least they explain his motivation and that he's crazy. I bought his motivation more than I bought Michael Keaton, even though Michael Keaton's probably one of the best Marvel villains that they've had so far. I'd argue.
Yeah, I also appreciated that Michael Keaton's Vulture wasn't. I mean, obviously he's a bad dude. I mean, even though he only accidentally kills his henchman that time with the gun, he still doesn't really look that broken up about it, you know?
Right,
so,
but that's another thing is, like, the character turn doesn't work because then later, he's all about killing this 15-year-old boy. Like, gleefully. You know, like, every time Michael Keaton is playing the Vulture as villainous and murderous, I buy it. But, like, at the beginning of the movie, in scenes like that, I'm like, I feel like he's playing Mr. Mom. Like, he's like, I'm a really nice guy. Like, I'm a working class guy. Let's go. I'm going to go make the movie gung-ho.
I don't know. I think that Michael Keaton can't help but bring some weird level of undercurrent of unease to any performance he's making. Like, even when, like, Toombs is kind of, like, being friendly Toombs, there's just this weird, like, I don't know, unease about him. I don't know, but I don't think I had a problem, really, with the portrayal, or the character, so to speak. Although,
like I said, I thought it was amazing. I just felt like the weird character moments where you're supposed to buy that he was a good guy,
right,
kind of threw off the performance. You know,
I think he's the character is probably not a great dude, but he does have legitimate, grievances with Tony Stark.
Totally.
And you could kind of see yourself, like, if you just got totally screwed out of your job and your life plans for supporting your family. You got this truck full of weapons. Now, maybe I wouldn't be like, well, I'm going to make weapons and sell them to criminals, but I could see myself being like, I'm just going to keep this for me.
But here's another problem with the plot. So they got the Tinkerer there, and the dude is smart enough to retrofit alien technology with Earth technology. Like, it seems like he could get a much better job than that. Like, he could be doing better than working. What was he doing for Michael Keaton in the first place?
Maybe he's
he was the fucking IT guy, and he's just like,
well, maybe he already had a criminal record, and he can only get a job in construction or
fair point.
Deconstruction.
Fair point, but there should have been a line about that if that's the case.
Well, that's true.
But also, I gotta figure there's more applications for, like, this limitless alien technology. Like, it was like 0 point energy or some shit. Like, couldn't they have done something besides building weapons? I mean...
Yeah, in a more cynical version of this Marvel universe, I can imagine a point where Tony Stark is talking with some other high up industry types and is like, look, the Earth's not ready to have this kind of technology. Let's try to, like, ease the world into having, the ability to have flying cars and jetpacks and whatever. But
instead of being like, you get an arc reactor and you get an arc reactor, everybody gets an arc reactor.
Right. If you have,
they kind of dropped that subplot from Avengers, by the way, where he's like, I'm the new name in like limitless clean energy. They kind of forgot about that. But that's fine. It's. I will say that one of my favorite moments in the movie was, and because there's no chance that I would have guessed this, when Pepper Potts shows up.
Right. I had no idea that was going to happen.
Well, my thing is, like, why would you pay Gwyneth Paltrow God knows how much money for, like, a minute at most on screen? Like, probably, like, closer to 45 seconds. But it worked.
Right.
Partially because of that little tease of, like, he's going to ask her to marry him.
Right.
Which I really hope they follow through on. Because I think that's a little connective square to the larger Marvel universe where it's unnecessary, but I think it drives the plot forward in a way that you didn't need to see it, but it's nice that it's there. Like, if in Avengers Infinity War they're already married, you wouldn't question that. You'd just be like, I guess they got back together. But having that scene in there assists that in a positive way for me as an audience member. Another little connective thread. So the principal of Peter's school, which is like a tech school, like a MIT prep school kind of thing.
Right.
In fact, I think it's called MITS. Midtown Institute of Technology, something like that. It's something like that. MITS. No, it's MIST. Midtown Institute of Science and Technology. Anyway, it's MIST. Anyway, so the principal of that school, as he's talking to Peter in his office, has a little framed picture above his head that's meant to be of his grandfather. And there's no reason for him to have a picture of his grandfather up, But his grandfather, like you see, is from, like probably in World War II or in a military uniform. And the connection that you're supposed to make is that was one of Cap's Holland Commandos. Because I'm pretty sure that was an Asian guy. I think that was him in the movie. So, kind of a weird coincidence for, to be realistic, but really, really like that. Like, that was a nice little moment where, like, you didn't have to notice it, but, it's connected thread that I think helps the audience, or helps the universe.
I thought it was interesting that apparently, I read an interview that, like, they shot all the German airport fight scenes, the ones that were in his, like, home, phone camera footage. They had to reshoot all of that, again.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it wasn't like something they shot during Civil War. I
was wondering, I was kind of hoping they did.
I mean, yeah, that would have been probably cheaper for them if that had happened that way, but of course, I mean, obviously they didn't get all those actors back together. I'm sure there was
you didn't see any of them, though.
Trickery.
You didn't really see any of them.
Right, well, yeah, just from a distance. Just their blurry
easily could have been standing.
Yeah.
Or it might have just been CGI.
Well, that's true, too.
So, there's a rumor, right before, the day the movie came out, there was a rumor that Spider-Man 2, whatever they call that, is going to be set a few minutes after the first Avengers, the Infinity War. Huh. So, what I'm wondering is, because I don't know about you, but I really like that little Peter's making a home movie intro. I thought it was charming. There was a lot to get the point across of what kind of Peter Parker we're looking at. He's a little geeky, he's a little weird, he's a fanboy. Like, they do an amazing job of getting the point across of what, like, establishing what kind of Peter we're dealing with.
Right.
Just in case you didn't see Civil War, which is good. It's good that that is one problem that people have is, somebody was telling me this other day, they don't like the way, like, they like the fact that Marvel's connected, but they don't like the fact that it feels like you have to see every movie to understand the next movie. Which isn't strictly true, but it is true for a certain number of the movies.
Right.
But, certainly for the Avengers movies, I feel like you kind of have to keep up. But, like, for the solo movies, I don't know if that's true. But they do a great job of establishing that. But, so what I'm wondering is if the second movie isn't going to have a very similar opening.
Right.
Because the whole thing, like, you don't necessarily notice it immediately. The whole thing is meant to be an homage to, like, the classic Peter Parker being a Daily Bugle photographer and, like, like setting up his camera to take pictures while he's fighting.
Right. It's
meant to be a little homage to that, in a very colorful, fun way. And so I'm wondering, like, is that what's going to happen? Like, because I'd be down for that. I do like. Right. I don't think they should do it too many times, but like if they did it a second time where Peter's like, "Fuck, I got asked to be like an Avenger again. Now I'm fighting alongside Captain America or whatever happens," and I want a little footage of that, whatever, Anyway, just a thought.
That would be cool.
But like I said, like I know I just did a lot of like breaking down like what I had a problem with in this movie. But it's at the end of the day, it's a solid movie. I'm probably gonna buy it. Like I said, I saw it twice. I didn't really have to. Like I felt like I needed to, but
I could see it again. I've only seen it once so far, but I could imagine going to see it again. I don't know if I will, but I would not have a problem with it.
I think the main reason that I like it is because it's a very Marvel movie in this way. You can feel the genuine affection that the creators had for the property.
Right.
Like when you see the little moment towards the end that's like straight out of the Spider-Man comic where he's lifting the building off of himself.
Right.
Like that's somebody who loves Spider-Man. That's not somebody who's just like, just give me a bunch of comics that I can rip off. That's somebody who read that comic.
Right.
You know? And then on a filmmaker standpoint, like, there's so many nice little touches, and like, one of them I think I had mentioned to you that I loved was from that scene where Peter's, like, realizing that he's going to die. By the way, Tom Holland, I felt like, did a really good job of, like, it didn't feel like shitty acting. It felt like,
right.
You know, it felt like a kid who really is afraid to die, suddenly realizing his own mortality. But there's a little moment where he looks at a puddle in front of him, and his mask had come off, and it's in the water. And so he sees half his face and half the Spider-Man mask. And, you know, and I was like, that's a fucking amazing shot.
Yeah, that was
like,
a great shot.
You know, that's some real thought and love put into it, you know. So, like I said, as much wrong as it got right, but overall, it's a Spider-Man movie.
Right.
You know, like, again, maybe next movie a little more power and responsibility, like, as subtext.
Yeah.
You know, because I don't really need the line.
Right.
I know the line. But I need to feel like this is Peter Parker.
I have a feeling, and I could be wrong, I have a feeling they'll go into that in the next movie more. I think this, whether or not it was the right decision, I don't know, but they just want to avoid the feeling of, oh my gosh, we just went through all this, and we're doing it again for the first movie with this character. Now, maybe it was necessary, and they should have, I don't know, but, you know, we just had Uncle Ben die, and even in Amazing Spider-Man, he tries to say, with great power comes with great responsibility, but basically says it, like, in a way that's, like, 5 times as long. I don't know if you remember that.
No.
Uncle Ben's like, Peter, when people have gifts that give them the ability to affect change in the world, I don't know.
They don't have to say the specific line.
Right, but I know what you mean.
But I need to get that feeling from it. And I really do feel like this movie was maybe a little rushed because it needed to fit into the larger Marvel narrative.
Right.
You know, like you mentioned, like, I wondered genuinely if that Civil War footage was shot at the same time.
Right.
And you just told me it's not. Well, that implies to me that they hadn't even started working on Spider-Man at that point.
Or at least that,
which was last year.
Or at least that intro.
You're right. Okay. But what I'm saying is, like, so there was probably just things that they hadn't, you know, like, they'd probably just gotten started working on it, you know, at that point. They were probably in pre-production or something like that when Civil War was coming out. But, so yeah, I really do think, I just think it was a mistake. I think they just didn't really think it through. And oh my God, that's a lot of traffic, and it looks like there was some sort of accident.
No.
Well, we've been talking for an hour. Do you have any last thoughts on the movie? Like, any particular moments that really stood out to you, or, you know?
I thought, not really. I think, like, the characters were, you know, well realized. The acting was pretty much all very good. The humor, for the most part, all landed.
Yeah.
And I really like that Peter Parker has a friend that he's like, you know, obviously he had Harry Osborn in the other movies, but they didn't really feel like buddies like these guys are.
I didn't see Dane DeHaan. But I did see James Franco.
That was sad because, like, I thought both those actors really did try to give that movie their best. It's just the material.
It was a shit concept.
Yeah, just let them down. I mean, it was so forced to have that Harry Osborn go from, you know, hey Peter, I'm back in town, let's hang out, to like, I'm evil and a mutant and I'm gonna kill you in like the span of one movie. I don't know. It was just,
I like Ned. The problem is like, number one, Ned does feel like he's in a different movie. Like,
he's
like,
the guy in the chair.
You know, yeah. But I'm saying, like, it feels like he's in Weird Science, like a reboot of Weird Science. And I wouldn't even notice that, except for as soon as Karen comes into the movie, she's a way better, like, confidant than he is. And so, like,
which is going to lead to him becoming Hobgoblin so he can compete with, you know.
So what are you saying? Peter's going to start fucking his suit? He's gonna have a third web shooter. But no, I really like the character and the actor. I just like as soon as Karen comes in, it kind of undermines his role because they have the same role, except hers is more intimate because she's literally. He might be the guy in the chair. She's the chick in his ear. And in the next movie, he's gonna have Karen, so he doesn't need the guy in the chair anymore. Like literally, the only reason that he is the guy in the chair is because Karen was taken away from him.
Well, yeah, but he also probably provides a human insight that she doesn't have about things, I guess.
I don't know. The only thing she did wrong was suggest that he make out with her right there in the elevator.
She also like automatically you jump to trying to use lethal force and that kind of thing.
That it's a cute joke, but
his eyes started glowing red, which is
right. No, but it does reinforce what I was saying earlier. Like Tony Stark basically gave a child a loaded weapon. Not even basically, he did. Why is that? It's a joke, but still.
As much as that Spider-Man sequence in Civil War was really enjoyable, it really undermined, in a way, that movie too, because it's a pretty somber, serious movie about registration of superheroes and superpowers.
Right.
And then, pretty much on a whim, Tony Stark's like, I'm going to just recruit this 15-year-old kid.
Which
take him to another country.
The point in an opposite way.
Right. To take him to another country and fight some of, the most powerful humans on the face of the planet.
Oh, speaking of which, I forgot to mention this. Now, I'm not a big Hannibal Buress fan, but when he has that line...
I think he's a war criminal.
I'm pretty sure this guy's a war criminal, but anyway.
That was really good.
And I will commend Kevin Feige or whoever came up with it, the Captain America trolling at the end.
Right.
Even though, by that point, I really wanted to be out of the movie, and it was very dickish. But it's also kind of common sense because it's still a Sony movie. It wouldn't make sense for them to have a Marvel post-credit scene, even though they're partnered together. So, but that's just like the Pepper Potts thing. How much money did they pay Chris Evans to shoot those scenes?
I have no idea.
Probably a lot. But I did note, I don't know if you noticed this, but so in those scenes that Chris Evans is in, he's in the Avengers, first Avengers costume.
Right.
But it's the exact same costume, but they adjusted the color on it so it wasn't that powder blue that was so bothersome because that's I don't know if you remember this. I think you and I were discussing the Avengers at one point, and I was like, one of my biggest problems is some of the costumes in this.
Right.
Like when Pepper Potts is in booty shorts, little jean shorts, I'm like, I don't ever see that character in jean shorts, and it really bugs me. And then the other thing was the powder blue Captain America costume. So, but yeah, look, end of the day, probably one of the most enjoyable movies of the year.
Yeah.
And if I have problems with it and stuff like that, it's probably because I'm a cynical asshole.
I do think it's interesting that...
Thank you for not saying yes.
People always, every year, they predict the end of, superhero films as a thing. But this year, the only, surefire, successful blockbuster movies have been the comic book movies. Logan, Guardians 2.
Except for Beauty and the Beast.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. That's its own surefire hit.
Right.
That Disney has discovered, the live-action remake.
I don't know. Did Maleficent do well?
I think it did fairly well.
I'm not sure. I'm just asking. I don't...
Yeah. But, every year it seems like
but for the most part, it does,
doom and gloom of the superhero genre. And I gotta admit, sometimes, I'll see one of these and just be like, well, that was okay, but whatever. But
I think the bloom is off the rose, but it's nice that they can still put out...
Well, I think they can keep stepping up to the plate and doing a fairly good job overall, with some exceptions.
Well, I hope Warner Brothers learned something from Wonder Woman. I doubt it.
maybe so.
So, all right, we're gonna end this here because we're at 65 minutes. I'm sorry for any of the background noise. We try to talk loud. We'll be back to our regular scheduled MHOG episode soon. Thank you, Hustle.
You're welcome.
Not so much for this, but for buying me that burger at Mugshots. I'd also like to remind everyone that I would fuck Rue McLanahan as she is now. And if anyone can make that happen, cool. So I've been your host, Adam.
I'm your guest co-host, John.
Are you sure? Because you sounded really unsure just then.
I don't know what my official title would be.
You don't like calling yourself the Hustle. That's my pet.
I could say the Hustle.
All right.
This is the Hustle signing off.
All right. I think that should be your voicemail. What's up? It's the Hustle. You know what to do, bitch. Anyway, give it battle.
That story got a point, and if you let them explain, it's the pun of all